Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Best Phone Plans Podcast. Joining me today, we have special guests Mike Cadoux and Elena Piech talking about AR. And Mike, you're actually the general manager for QReal, correct? So do you want to talk about that and what kind of experiences you guys are offering in terms of augmented reality and the services you provide?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I like talking about QReal, so I appreciate it. Um, at the base, the core of what we do is create lifelike 3D models, mostly for brands and companies. And so we create lifelike 3D models with a bent towards putting them into augmented reality or virtual reality experiences. And so what that really entails is creating the models, making them look like a true digital twin of the product, and then making sure that the same model can be distributed throughout their entire digital ecosystem. So that would include on their web, so replacing pictures or as an additive feature to show a 3D view of the product. We're partners with Snapchat, do a lot of work with Instagram, and so we create a lot of social media lenses um, with the 3D models, and then we also put them onto apps and 3D ad units. So there's like Google has a product where they create 3D ad units. You can see the full the full model in there, and it's pretty cool actually. And so, anyways, the same model we create one time can be distributed throughout your entire digital ecosystem. And then, if the client needs be, we can do a full end-to-end from like concepting to creation to distribution of full 3D or AR experiences, whatever they're looking for.
That's sweet. That's sweet. And yeah, kind of what are companies looking for? What are they using these 3D assets for? And what kind of engagement have they found from incorporating 3D into some of their marketing promotional items? Like, is there more engagement? Is it easier for customers to understand a product? Just what have you been seeing from that?
Yeah, so augmented reality. It's a good question. Augmented reality started off. You can almost say it started off with like Snapchat in a way, the kind of modern era of it. And so engagement was the main KPI they were measuring with it, right? It's really difficult to get any kind of consumer to interact with your brand. Companies spend millions of dollars to do that. Can create elaborate on-site installations that cost a fortune just to get people to interact with, Heineken or something. They'll, spend millions to own the U.S. Open so that people will drink it in a spot like that. And so augmented reality came around and offered kind of a fun and immersive and interactive way to exist with a product, right? And so brands hopped on this and started making fun experiences or things that people is very shareable, right? So the first thing from Snapchat wasn't branded, but it would be like a crown on your head, you take a picture selfie of yourself with it, send it to your friends. And so that type of engagement was the main feature for it, right? And proved really valuable, right? On a lot of our the lenses we create, we can go from 8 to like average 20 seconds engagement, which for sounds silly because that 20 seconds is nothing, but in the modern day, you get 20 seconds, it's gold, right?
Yeah, I was going to say modern day is maybe a second, 2 seconds if you're lucky. So 20 seconds is huge on engagement.
When you're editing videos and movies, typical cuts are like 1 to 1.5 seconds tops. So yeah, I think a 20-second block of time is actually quite a long time for people to be engaged with the product.
Yeah, really. I mean, 8 seconds I'm wicked happy with, right? And so that has been proven so far. I mean, the numbers are there for it. That it's just novel and you can create such immersive experiences that people will interact. And now it's been moving more into an e-commerce and sales uplift type area where you're trying to see if you can use it to actually push the bottom line, right? When you envision an item, and it looks like it's right in front of you, and you can inspect it in full 3D, and you can see what it looks like in your house, or you can see what it would be like to eat. These are things that can trigger, a far more action oriented and like craveability for the user. And so, we've been seeing already, and there's some amazing sales lift numbers out there. We ran a campaign with Panera where we put out Facebook ad units and Instagram and Snapchat, I believe. And what we found is by showing 3D food in a full AR experience, 25% of the users who engaged with the AR experience went to a cafe and purchased.
Wow, that's huge. Do you actually want to talk about Panera a little bit, like what the project was and what QReal was able to do for Panera for that campaign and how the user interacted with the AR experience?
Yeah, so this one was like we were focusing on their breakfast campaign, right? They just came out with free coffee and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Or I think it's subscription coffee. It's
my flatmate's actually on that. He's been drinking tons of Panera coffee.
There you go. Yeah. The ROI maybe won't work on him. And so it would show a face lens, so you see yourself. We made you look really drowsy and crappy, and then
thank you, Mike.
Yeah, right. And then I think you raised your eyebrows or something. You made some trigger, and the sun shone. And the coffee came up, like it will save your day kind of thing. And so, just that one effect of like when the coffee appears, you get more beautiful and more bright. And then you could switch to what we call the world lens. So that's looking at your face. We call that the face lens. You can switch to the world to see what's on surfaces in front of you, basically. And so in the world lens, we showed like a little, beautiful little breakfast sandwich kind of thing. And, on one of those breakfast in bed trays with beautiful ray of sunshine and flowers and stuff, like, this is what Panera can bring to you virtually.
Sure.
And so, this type of face interaction, so you can see yourself, which people love, and then to see the product in real life 3D in front of them. And that was it. And then, as I said, pumped it through all the social media channels and got great reaction to it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, Mike, how does someone actually go about getting like a filter made? Like if me and Stetson wanted to get a fun filter made for Snapchat, right, for our Best Phone Plans podcast, like what would we have to do to go about making that happen?
You mean like you personally, or you hire me to do it? What's the...
Yeah, like if I hired you, right, like tell me what that process looks like if I wanted you to make me a filter on Snapchat for the podcast.
Yeah. So, first we would talk about the campaign, right? So what are you trying to accomplish with it? Are you trying to get engagement? Are you trying to get sales? These types of end goals. And so we'll start at the end and work our way back to the actual experience. And so, if you were, then we would hopefully see if you had any kind of, we would get your logo, any other press materials you had, get an idea for the brand, right? And then have a full creative design team and creative strategists, and we would come up with a couple different mocks and storyboards to show you what it could look like. And take one step back. We'd also talk about what platform you wanted to be on. So Snap, Instagram, Facebook, they all have different capabilities, different file size requirements. They're all a little bit different, have different capabilities. So we would understand that, understand the campaign, come up with some storyboards, present them to you. Hopefully you like one of them, right? And then we go into production. And that's a pretty normal kind of production cycle where, we'll create a round one. You say, yeah, it looks great. And then talk shit about a couple parts of it, right?
Yeah.
And then, and then we do a couple rounds and then we have a lens, right? And then you can either release it organically, which means like you put it out on your feed, people find it, they go for it, or you can obviously put paid advertising behind it.
Okay. And Mike, when you were talking about companies, I know Panera Bread was like one of the bigger ones for you guys, but outside of them, have you worked with like, I don't know, T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, any like big cell phone companies in the industry on any projects for them yet?
No. We've been talking to them, they've reached out to us a bunch about 5G basically. So 5G will change a lot when it comes to augmented reality, just pure download speed and what you can run on it.
Yeah,
there's a lot of kind of ulterior things that, with real-time rendering, and there's some amazing things that'll happen when 5G comes on when it comes to AR. Unfortunately, I can't talk about those conversations I've had or who we've had them with.
Sure.
But they're kind of bigger stuff. It's not like, they don't reach out to us to make an AT&T lens. I haven't done that, right? And our initial work doesn't really apply to them, right? I can make the AT&T logo in 3D or something, right? But mostly what we do is make content for other brands.
Yeah.
But the 5G thing is something we've talked to a couple of those suppliers about, of those carriers about. And yeah, I probably can't say any more about that, but that they're really focused on AR and 5G. I can say that.
But I think that starts an interesting point in the conversation is just looking at how 5G is going to shape AR. I know that you definitely would be somebody who could talk a little bit about that. Once, give it another year, 2 years, once more people have 5G enabled devices, what do you think is going to happen with the future of AR?
Yeah, God, it's hard to even, I've been proven wrong so many times. I think when you think about augmented reality and the future, I think what you really have to think about is a second world, basically, right? And not a second world like virtual reality where you're in an encapsulated one, but kind of another skin on top of our current one, right? And so with that, when you're talking about 5G, you're not only talking about downloading files necessarily, but also capability to do incredibly quick machine learning, to understand different buildings, different mountains, to have machine learning and artificial intelligence that understand these things such that you can, in effect, have permanent resting augmented reality. So what I mean by that would be like the phone could instantly recognize the McDonald's arches, and McDonald's could run a full campaign where anyone opens up their iPhone and looks at the McDonald's arches and there's a second world existing on it, on the cell phone, right? And then when it comes to that, the sky's your limit. You could run, immensely detailed campaigns for it, right? You wouldn't just be, I could show you a Big Mac. It'll look amazing, actually, our Big Macs. But I mean, you could run basically a full, Avatar. The movie, right? Like an immense, beautiful experience all around it, right? And so I think that's a world that is coming quickly, actually, and will necessarily be enabled by 5G. And as of now, they're all limited experiences. And so when I say that, what I mean is like you'll have a phone and you'll get pushed a social media lens or on a website, and you have an isolated little augmented reality experience. But I think pretty soon when 5G comes along, and I know that the kind of top dogs there are planning on this, that it'll open up, basically the built world to have digital overlay on it, right? And what that really means, it's hard to understand. It's like hard to picture that. There's Neil Stephenson's latest book is super interesting when it comes to this, if I can nerd out for 1 second.
Sure.
And if you start thinking about kind of, wearables and AR glasses or just a phone like that, and if you think about like a built world over it, right? Or I'm sorry, a digital world over the built world, well, it'll almost certainly follow the path of like our social media feeds, right? So they'll be personalized to you. They'll be in situ where you are, right? And those will get winnowed down to the things that you like more and more and more, but they'll feel very, very real. So when I say this, he comes up with kind of a scarier world in which people are just living in completely different realities, right? Like quite literally, you're living in a different reality. Like the tree in front of you could, for me, could have, hanging stars off of it because I love Christmas. And for you could have hanging skulls because you're one of these weird dudes or something, right? And you'll just see and envision, like quite literally, your whole world will be in just completely different from the person standing right next to you. And so that is, once that personalization mixed with AR occurs, man, I don't even,
So
who knows?
So just taking a quick step back so we can kind of like simplify it a little bit and make sure I understand. you're basically saying right now the AR experience, it's essentially all happening on like the local device, right? Like it's the phone that's doing the processing. It's the
Right.
phone's sensors that's pulling that information in. And if I'm following you correctly, you're saying that with 5G, what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot more of that processing happen more on like the server side, and from that have more communications with different like input devices to gather that information and then display that to the end user. Am I sort of following along correctly?
Yeah, I think you actually said it smarter than I said it. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the server side rendering is humongous when it comes to this stuff. So that's a great point that I didn't mention.
So, and then also just to keep it really simple, like right now, right? Like I download a Snapchat filter, right? I got the little dancing man on my table that's happening from the camera. Kind of picture give me a picture of what you're going to be able to do like in your ideal world that you couldn't do right now because you're limited by that limited computational power on that device, right? Like you were saying, everything's going to be connected. You're going to be able to pull more info. Tell me what that looked like kind of looks like for you. Like what does that look like?
I mean, I'll go real simple with it. You can see a dancing hot dog from Snapchat, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the future, you'll be able to see like a dancing concert full of hot dogs in an arena with blasting music, and another hot dog on the stage ripping a guitar riff. You know what I mean? It's like this one little thing will become this big grand thing, right?
That's awesome.
And so I think that's an easy way to think about it.
That's awesome. So, Mike, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball question that's going to move off of the AR topic for a moment. As you know, Best Phone Plans Podcast, right? Our bread and butter is talking about all things cell phone related. I was just kind of curious, who's your go-to cell phone provider? Who do you personally use?
Man, I'm a Verizon guy now, but for no good reason. I apologize. I'm not you actually caught me at a good time. I'm thinking about switching to T-Mobile.
Okay.
But only for the phones. In my world, I need new phones all the time, and so I've been just toying. By the way, I don't know how you guys should actually tell me how to go about this. But when I switched from AT&T to Verizon, I got a free phone, and now I want to go to T-Mobile to get a free phone, and then after that, maybe I'll go back to AT&T. But I don't know if they'll let me. I haven't done my research enough. I'm to be honest, I'm pretty agnostic about it. I was with AT&T for ages just because, inertial. Funny enough, these guys advertised all the time. I mean, God, so much advertising. And I don't know if I'm just not receptive to it. Maybe I'm just too smart, probably. But I never see it. It just goes right through me. And then finally, I was driving to pick up my kids from school, and I realized that right next to my local grocery store that I go to all the time is a T-Mobile store. I had never even seen it. You know what I mean? Like I never even considered it. So anyways, I apologize. I don't have that's not where I nerd out. I'll say that.
Sure. Well, You mentioned the phones actually. So what phone are you looking to switch to, or like what would get you excited for helping to create your AR experiences?
Well, so yeah, again, all I think about is the AR technology when it comes to these phones. For me, I have probably like, a dozen apps on my phone. I'm not actually a big phone guy. But the AR technology is different on the different phones, right? So on all of the iPhones and Apple products, you'll have what's called AR Kit, and that's just Apple's proprietary AR technology, which is beautiful. They've really done a great job. And then any Android powered device will use Google's product, which is called AR Core, which is a little behind AR Kit, I think, just in terms of stability. And what these technologies are doing is they're doing a lot of things, but one of them is they're like reading surfaces in front of you, mapping them and placing objects on them, basically. And there can be really cool stuff like if you can put it behind something else, right? There's just a lot of kind of technical cool stuff within that. But there's, they're both trying to own this world through this different cell phones. And so I was with AR Kit. I had an iPhone, and I went specifically to AR Core in a way because I always want to be the least common denominator, right? And so I wanted, I knew AR Core wasn't quite up to the standard, and I was using it on the beautiful AR Kit and didn't understand what the gajillions of Android users would see. and my whole, and so then I switched over to Android phones. I got a Google Pixel for that reason. And now weirdly, I have so many of my team are international that they all have, a lot of them are on Androids. And so just by happenstance, my company is flush with Androids and short on iPhones. So now I'm going to go back to the iPhone just for almost literally testing purposes, because we test stuff on phones all the time. And so now I need an iPhone.
Well, you just talked about lowest common denominator, and you mentioned a really good point. So like in the US, in our domestic market, right, iPhone typically has supremacy. But around the world, internationally, Android is the one that holds the most market share.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we lightly touched on from last episode is how Android has so many variances, right? Like Android is not known for being great about getting everybody to the latest version of an OS, so you might be missing specific toolkits that you were kind of referring to. And I was just wondering if when you're designing these different things for Snapchat or whatever it is, if you have to take totally different approaches for the US market versus if you're trying to do something more abroad, maybe in Europe or something like that.
Yeah, so a lot of the projects we do will have like, minimum viable phones basically, right? And you can, for whatever we're specifically doing, we'll have a minimum, whatever it is, Android 6 or something as a pretty normal minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Is Android on, was it on 8 now or something? I can't remember.
No, it's on Android 10.
10, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. They were named after desserts for a while there. So.
Yeah,
Oh,
marshmallow,
that's right, they were.
Kit Kat. Oh, yeah.
That's right. So, what we'll do is see, basically like in order to run Instagram filters, you need to have an Android 6 and above. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, we don't create experiences for the actual lowest common denominator. I don't mean to demean anybody who has an old phone or something like that, but if you have an old phone, if you're on an old Android, if you're on an iPhone 5 or something, like you're not seeing our stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and so, but on the flip side, most brands just aren't worried about that as much.
Right.
And so, for us, it's mostly just following the guidelines. You can think of us like I didn't create Excel, right? All I do is create algorithms on top of it. Mm-hmm. So whatever Excel will allow me to do, I'll do to the highest of degrees. And if Excel will run on an iPhone 6, then my shit will run on an iPhone 6.
Okay. And
Sweet.
something else I just want to mention. In the international stage, China is almost like its own separate beast all to itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering, since in China, a lot of like American service like Google Play Store isn't available, are you able to make your way into that market, or do basically anybody that has like a Chinese phone is just kind of out of luck because it's missing your necessary tools for those filters that you were talking about?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I'm just gonna be honest. I don't know I don't think anyone. We're not smart enough to have gone into the Chinese market yet. The US one's big enough for us at this point, and we don't have any Chinese customers. And so I'm just not up on like, can they look at Instagram? Do they have Snapchat? What kind of internet freedom do they have?
Yeah.
We just haven't worked there yet. So I
no worries,
don't
man.
know. Yeah, I bet they're like Huawei phones are awesome, but I just.
Mike, I have a question. So when you're building these AR experiences, you have a lot of different assets and data you need to pull in, and you need the phone to process. How do you prioritize different things like frame rate, the visual quality and resolution of the renders, and lag as you're designing these experiences to kind of prioritize what the best result will be for the user?
Yeah, so luckily we work within platforms that already have limitations on it based on these things. So as I was talking about kind of with the Excel metaphor. So, we'll make a Snapchat lens, for instance, and it'll have a maximum RAM capacity, and it'll have a minimum file size, or a maximum file size, I should say. And so a lot of the platforms we work with just have these internal guidelines already. And so we can just follow those. Now, a lot of times we mess it up, right? And it's a real, when I say that, I mean like, we create a cool animation within a lens and it's using too much RAM, or we create instances of raindrops and they all have their own physics to them and the RAM just can't keep up with it. And that's more of a mistake on our part than it's more like trial and error for us because we know what we have to achieve. We just have to test it. And then there are more open platforms like Google has a product called Model Viewer, which shows 3D models on websites, and that has like almost unlimited space. But if you make the model too big, right, and with that, it's mostly model size, just for download purposes. You're just going to get it's going to take a long time to download. The page will get listed more poorly on Google because of how long it takes to download, these types of things. So some of the products just have like limits, and you just stick within it, kind of like playing a sport or something. You just follow the rules. And some of them are more free form, and you have to take in consideration model quality and experience versus the ulterior possible deficiencies of download time and stuff like that.
So Mike, we have a what's called a Patreon, and one of our patrons had posed a question for you today when you came on the show. The question that they had for you was, which carrier do you think is going to become the leader in providing the 5G infrastructure to your AR business?
I mean,
does it even matter? I mean,
yeah,
is it more focused on like speed or?
We're pretty agnostic. So for us, the carrier only matters in the sense of, can they get the 5G to the phone? And then after that, the phone is what really matters for us. When I say that, I mean like to create the experiences for that specific platform for the phone.
Yep.
So yeah, I apologize because you guys talk about phones a lot.
No,
and
okay.
when we think about phones, we think about them like in a pretty small silo, right?
Right.
And so I'm not on top of who has the best 5G or who has the most towers or anything like that, because it does not particularly applicable to our business. As of now, I hope it's Verizon, because I'm on Verizon, and when I moved to T-Mobile,
hopefully it's T-Mobile, right?
Yeah. Hopefully they win, and then when I moved back to AT&T, maybe they'll win. Then maybe I'll just follow it like that. But
Sure.
It's totally fine. We all have our different focuses, right? So it's not a big deal. And honestly, at the end of the day, I know I'm glad that you're focused on that, because that just means that you're putting 110% in, and we'll get to see even more cool products. I'm definitely hoping for this world where I can get the tree covered in skulls that you talked about earlier.
Or the concert full of hot dogs too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But I think looking at carriers, though, I would say my money right now is on Verizon, because Verizon's investing a lot in terms of having a public face. They host a lot of free webinars talking about where 5G is going for healthcare, education, other industries, and they also have funding where they're supporting creators that want to build and make 5G content. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, they teamed up with the Met, and they did an entire experience where you just clicked on a website. It was web enabled, so you didn't have to download an app, and you could move your phone around, and it felt like you were in the Met. And so you could go to different rooms, and anybody could access that. But then they also had special 5G enabled experiences within that. And out of all the providers that I've seen so far, I'm really seeing the most visibility with Verizon.
Sweet. We actually have a question from someone in the live chat, Austin. He's asking, Mike, can you explain a little bit about what led to the formation of QReal? And then obviously the market is primed for AR content with the onset of millimeter wave 5G. Do you think this will transform how consumers consume content?
Yeah, cool. So QReal used to be called Kabak, Kabaq, and it was founded by my two partners currently, Alper Guler and Jenner Sawyer, who are two super smart Turkish dudes who came to the U.S. to start a company.
Wasn't it a Turkish word for something?
Yeah, it's Turkish for zucchini, I believe.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so and it was started with the express purpose to 3D model and push food content. And so we instantly became the kind of world leaders in like capturing a real life piece of food, basically, or dish, I should say. And then we could push it through all these different things. That's why we worked with brands like Panera and Domino's and Subway and stuff like this. And so, but while we were focusing on food and kind of owning that space, the process we were doing, we realized worked for all sorts of products, right? And so the same process that we would capture a dish with, lasagna, we can also capture a boot with, right? And so then we start expanding into other verticals, namely kind of fashion, apparel, construction, and real estate type stuff. And so, we just consumer electronics as well. So we started kind of morphing from food out. They brought me on, mostly to like write good emails, I think, at first. I'm not sure. But I have to give them credit. Like the Alper and Jenner are the real kind of geniuses behind QReal. And, Jenner Sawyer is probably, in my opinion, the best 3D modeler in the world. I don't know anyone who's the best at anything besides him. I think he might be. Truly talented individual. Alper's cool too. He's my boy. But Alper runs more on the kind of marketing and tech side of it. And so, anyways, that's how it started, and how it's morphed. And so Kabak, once we kind of left the pure food space, we then rebranded as QReal, both because we were doing more stuff and because people couldn't pronounce Kabak. So that's a problem for a brand like ours.
Yeah, sure.
And yes, that's how QReal started. What was the second part of the question? I apologize.
It was kind of about how consumers consume content. So like, I guess how will having the higher data throughputs and potentially offloading processing to data centers enable new consumer experiences with the kind of AR content. And I think you almost talked about it earlier, where you're getting like a portal into a world, almost like the movie Avatar.
Yeah. I think there'll be two ways you can think about it. Number one, kind of portals like that, where you're in a new world. And the second one is the overlay, right? And so I think they'll both be really, really powerful. I mean, I think how they're going to consume it will mostly be pretty similar. Sure. Again, I don't think I'm qualified to talk about how they're going to be actually consuming it. What I mean by that is like social media and the internet will be the main drivers of these things. And so, currently we build already on social media and internet, and obviously social media is on the internet, but you know what I mean? Websites, I should say.
Yeah.
And so, I think what you're going to see is like, e-commerce will really take off when it comes to AR. Instead of seeing a 2D image, like shoes are a great example. Today you go on a shoe website and it'll have 15 different pictures of the shoes from each angle. Like that's going to go away, man. That's not the future. You'll see a single 3D model, inspect it all you want, zoom in, zoom out, see it to stitch level. We can get you to stitch level.
Wow.
And then take out your phone and look at yourself in the mirror and see how you look in them, right? It'll recognize your feet, put the shoes on your feet, and you can see how cool you look. And then you snap a picture of it and shoot it out on Instagram and ask your friends what they think, right?
That's amazing.
That can happen today, by the way. That's today. That's not even 5G. And so, I think, in terms of e-commerce, which is what we think about mostly, I think the try-on will be immensely powerful. Brands are just getting killed on returns. You know what I mean? Like size and fit, look, and all this stuff. They just get murdered. So if you can increase that by 5% by trying it on beforehand, which I think you'll be able to do more, it's a huge, huge change. So that's just one little corner of it. That's not even talking about the hot dogs in the stadium, right? Which is just pure experiential, or like Fortnite in the real world. We haven't even talked about gaming. I mean, Jesus, what Pokemon Go did is just going to be
just the first step, really.
Just the first step, yeah. And that was cool, right?
Yeah,
Pokemon Go was cool. But there's really cool, like Lego has some really cool new games that are in AR. And then once you have, like with the Apple just released the LiDAR sensor, right? And so now once you can kind of map a room and then start placing objects within it and then play a game or do any kind of experience, and it feels like it's exactly in your room because it's already mapped it so efficiently. I guess I'll just say, like, if you had, like I spent a lot of time in New York City, and people used to read books on the subway, and now they're just like this, and I would have never guessed it, right?
Right.
And it's hard for me to even imagine, really. Like what's we're really going to look like? I really don't know.
Sure.
But it'll be weird, and when you look back, it'll be normal in the time, and then if you look back at how we used to be, it'll seem really, really weird. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like, oh, you had to buy clothes online just by looking at a picture? You could just virtually try it on? Really?
Yeah. My kids will think that was so stupid, just like driving a car. Like, you had to drive your car? Is that what you're saying? Like, you held a wheel? Didn't people die? Like, yeah, actually, people did die. Yeah.
But
well, Mike, we want to be respectful of your time. We know you got to get going here. So what's a message you want to share with the audience? Where can people find you? Anything exciting the team is working on? Any cool AR experience to try?
Yeah, I mean, so go to QReal.io is our website. You can also check us out on Instagram as QReal3D. And then Instagram is actually, if you want to see something new you might not have seen on Instagram, most companies, if they've made any kind of 3D lenses, you can find them. They're logged there. So you can go to a new little icon with a face and a couple stars on it. That's your lenses. And so if you go to QReal 3D on Instagram, you can check out a bunch of our different lenses, and that's a great way to kind of start interacting with AR on a cool phone. And in terms of like what we're working on now, as I said, everything we do is branded, and that's just not. I can't talk about anything. Unfortunately, I know it's boring.
Yeah.
But,
you have a stack of NDAs just like looking at you.
Yeah, right. Everything's can't be talked about until it launches or the day before. So I apologize about that. I want to talk about the cool new stuff we're doing. But anyways, if you want to see what we do and spend all of our time on going on Instagram or going on the web, we'll show you a great idea of our products. And then your imagination and understanding of what phones and data and the future can be will be almost as viable as my own. Does that make sense?
Yep. Sounds good. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for making the time to come on the show, and to you as well, Elena, for a second episode. We really enjoyed having both of you on, and I know we're looking forward to all the future projects. We'll stay tuned for anything that you release.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much. Dennis and I are actually going to continue the show here with everyone because there was some exciting news in the cell phone world that we wanted to discuss as well after that, great discussion about AR. So again, you can find them linked in the discussion in the description down below, and we'll also include their links in the show notes if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast. But yeah, so Dennis, you want to jump into some kind of cell phone related news here? I feel like we had kind of a surprising number of things come out that we could talk about.
Yeah, I mean, where should we start? Let's start with the fact that T-Mobile got ranked as the fastest 5G network, Stetson.
Yeah, so Dennis, where did this report come out of?
I believe it was from...
was this Ookla? No, this was OpenSignal, I think.
OpenSignal. Yeah, OpenSignal, I believe, was the one that gave them the ranking for that. Now, I don't know about you, Stetson, but that's personally not been my experience at all, at least in my personal market. I mean, I did, as you know, before I came for the show today, right, I had a dental cleaning. I was actually down in at an area that had N41. I mean, I was literally like best possible case scenario for signal. I had carrier aggregation for band 66, 15 megahertz. I had carrier aggregation for band 10 megahertz, N71 5 megahertz, and then I had band 40 or N41 at 60 megahertz. I topped out at like 300 meg. That was best case scenario.
Best case scenario for T-Mobile 5G. Were you on S20? Were you on your iPhone?
T-Mobile phone is the S20, so this was literally the absolute pinnacle best case scenario for them.
Yeah.
And I topped that at 300 meg. For perspective, my AT&T phone, the iPhone 12 Pro Max that I carry around on AT&T, 500 meg.
Oh, geez. Was that on 5G or is that the 5G E?
It showed the 5G indicator, but iPhones, they don't really have all the tools, so I couldn't really see what I was connecting to.
Gotcha.
But just to give some perspective,
no, I completely agree with you. I mean, I wish I could like pull up the report in front of me right now, but I actually don't have a link. But like, do you know kind of what they were using to determine that metric? I mean, I almost feel like all 5G networks are the fastest 5G networks at this point. Like anytime you connect to a millimeter wave site, you're just getting some of the fastest speeds available in the telecom industry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, millimeter wave, yeah, it's going to be the fastest regardless, but it's in very, very small territories. So to me, millimeter wave almost doesn't matter because it's so small of a footprint. I mean, I know that we have our good friend Sneed, right? He lives in a great market. Verizon 5G millimeter is popping up everywhere, right?
Right.
But it's a very like small niche experience. Like things really have to be right. I mean, I remember when you did your testing down in your local city, right? 10 steps extra and you disconnected entirely from the 5G millimeter wave site, right?
It's so true. Yeah, it was absolutely crazy.
So, I mean, to me, that's exciting stuff. It's definitely going to be the future and the thing that gets us tantalized about 5G. But as far as the day-to-day experience is concerned, I definitely don't think that was the case. And if they were doing testing, right, I doubt that would have, they might have had 1 or 2 test results to skew, right?
Yeah, I think they likely went to, the fastest sites available and just tested, T-Mobile has the fastest peak performance in the one of 2 markets they actually have millimeter wave deployed. Meanwhile, AT&T, as my testing, AT&T is the fastest network in my area, hands down. And AT&T and Verizon, they typically, I don't know if they average faster 5G speeds because I feel like T-Mobile, they went with the low band approach, so you're getting 5G in more locations. But
I think as far as consistency is concerned, T-Mobile gives the most consistent 5G experience. It doesn't mean it's a fast experience, but it's the most consistent.
That's key. That's absolutely key.
I was going to say, honestly, man, you know me, I get hyped up about 5G. We talk about it all the time on the side. But right now, as far as things are concerned, I haven't seen anything that's maybe be like, wow, this is better than LT. Because a lot of these 5G networks, I don't want to get super nerdy after, but a lot of these 5G networks don't even have their 5G core yet.
Right, it's non-standalone, right?
Right. So they're still using the same type of architectural design as what an LT network is. At the end of the day, the only part of it that's 5G is the wireless output signal that's being sent to you. But when it ultimately ends up going into the internal network and gets properly routed, it's still following along that LTE sort of approach.
The pathway, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I know T-Mobile, I believe, introduced standalone 5G for parts of their network. And I know that Verizon has been investing tons of money into doing that and also virtualizing their network so that they could dynamically allocate more bandwidth when necessary when handling congestion. And they got some AI tech in place as well. But a lot of the stuff that still needs to be done for 5G to make sense still isn't there yet. I think like we talked about from the episode at the beginning of the year, that this is going to be the year where we actually start to see the benefits.
I think you're right, and I think part of that is also too getting the new modems. I have the S21 here, and just getting the Snapdragon 888 with that X60 modem that can do a better job aggregating the bands and pulling faster speeds. I think that's going to help in terms of coverage, performance, and just providing that better 5G experience.
Have you ran a speed test yet on your new phone?
Yeah, so I did one brief test because I've been kind of busy working on some things, but I did the S20 versus the S20 Plus, the S20 Plus versus the S21. And what I found is that the S20, I did 3 tests on each, S21 actually had faster speeds than the S20. So I think the improvement is there. I think it's going to be real. I'm going to do, of course, extensive testing. So if you're not subscribed on YouTube already, consider subscribing to the Stetson Doggett channel. But yeah, I think it's going to be big, and I'm excited for what new phones are going to come out in the future with the X60 modem, and I'm excited for what kind of speeds and performance they're going to be able to deliver.
So on the topic of testing, did you see that Ookla introduced a video stream test quality into their speed test app?
I did, and shout out to Austin, who's actually here in the chat, who pointed this out to me. So Ookla announced a video test feature in their app. I was ecstatic about this because I love being able to test and showcase video quality in a beautiful visual format. The problem right now is the video speed test is not registering as video content on the network. So it's actually bypassing all of the video speed caps that carriers have in place, right? So if I do the test on Metro by T-Mobile, it's capped at 480p, about 1.5 megabits per second. And Ookla's over here telling me like, 4K ready, you're good to go, stream all your shows like beyond HD. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I sent some feedback to them on Twitter, and I'm hoping they really do take it into consideration. But yeah, it's cool, but it's just like not where it needs to be right now.
Well, maybe Ookla thinks Ookla thinks everybody has ExpressVPN like you do, Stetson.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. Thank you. Yeah. Actually, speaking of video content, Netflix, they're rolling out Shuffle Play to all users this year, which means that on your home screen, right below your profile, you will see a Shuffle button that will just kind of launch you into a Shuffle content feature. Des, what are your thoughts on that? First of all, does it make sense to even watch? Do you watch Netflix on like a mobile device?
Not anymore. Not since COVID started. I mean, if we were back in the normal what I used to, but now that I'm working from home, yeah, no, I only watch it on TV. Right. But as far as the feature is concerned, I think it's a long time coming. Like, I think this should have been here since like day one, because I can't tell you the amount of times that I hop on Netflix and I don't know what I want to watch. I kind of want
algorithm knows.
Like, I just kind of want to, like, similar to TV, right? Like, I know you don't have linear TV, Stetson, but I know you know what this is like. Like, you just plop on the TV, you start flipping through channels to find something. That feature of Shuffle Play is essentially going to accomplish that for Netflix. Because there's so much stuff on Netflix, and it's really hard to find it all. So maybe I'll find some hidden gem that I never would have came across normally, thanks to it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And I think what Netflix is doing here is kind of flexing their algorithm muscle, where... right, they've observed user behavior and consumption patterns on their platform for so long because they were one of the first streaming services. I think that they can now leverage that data to create an algorithm, an AI that can recommend plans to help keep users on the platform and make people feel like they're getting first enjoyment out of the shows and that they're getting value out of their Netflix subscription, which is what, of course, Netflix wants.
So, moving on from that, we were talking about phones a second ago. You see, Sony announced a new $2,500 smartphone.
It's nuts. Yeah, I saw that. I don't even know. Is it worth it? What's even different about this phone? So I think it's the Xperia Pro.
Yeah, so basically, here's the gist of the phone. It's basically a revision of a phone that Sony's already made before. However, they've done some things that are dedicated to a very, very niche market. So, for example, they added an HDMI port built in, so you could easily plug it into Sony's new mirrorless camera that they announced, and you can kind of use it as like your screen to see the 4K footage that you're recording. They also have like other like bits of software and stuff like that on the phone itself to actually support like different things related to the camera itself. Originally, when we were talking about it in private, I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. However, I've been watching videos on it, specifically one by MKBHD when he was doing his review and talk about the phone. And I actually am going to backpedal, and I think the phone's actually not a bad deal. Because if you look at it, it depends on how you look at it. So if you're looking at it as a smartphone, like me and you, what are the average consumer? It's terrible. But if you look at it in the framework of this is like an accessory to my multiple $1,000 camera that has like $800 lenses, then it's actually a really good deal.
Yeah,
so,
it can show its value. It's a 4K display and it's OLED, which is great if you're monitoring content on the display. But I don't know, I struggle. So as a creator myself, I have some external monitors that I use, and they range from like $400 to $800, and they're still giving me great, like 5 inches, really color accurate, great. Like the Ninja 5 is one of them. And I'm just finding it hard to justify a $2,500 cost when you can get, in my opinion, pretty good monitoring tools at a significantly lower price.
But they're not 4K.
That's also true. I don't know. I still think $2,500 is too high of an asking point for.
If you look up the cost for like a 4K, like one of those like monitor attachments, they go for like $2,000 as like an accessory. They're like $2K. So $500 difference for a fully decked out phone that does way more than that, plus the 5G connectivity. Like, there's nothing out there that provides 5G connectivity to your very fancy camera. To me, that's the main selling point, is the ability to literally be taking a beautiful, 4K content and being able to directly live stream it to, say, YouTube straight from the phone, like straight from the camera via the phone, right? So it depends on the lens. To be clear here, it's very niche. I mean, the segment of the market that this is going to apply to is very small. Like, I'm basically just picturing, like, those people on the sidelines for sports games in the NFL?
Yep.
This is for them. That's who this is geared towards. Those are the people that need to be able to, like, use 5G and, like, live stream some content from their cameras, right? But someone like yourself, Stetson, right, running the YouTube channel yourself, you don't need it. I don't need it. But it's not meant for us. So I
guess you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's meant for kind of another. It's a niche audience, and hopefully it serves that niche audience super well.
But continue on the topic of phones, I want to circle back to yours. Did you see that the Snapdragon 888 has been having heating issues?
I have not. Can you tell me what's going on with that?
Okay, so with the new Snapdragon, they introduced a really powerful, like, single core, like, more powerful than it's ever been known before. Apparently, this core generates more power, and it's been causing heat issues. So similar to, I don't know if you remember when the Snapdragon 801 was introduced. Do you remember that chipset?
I actually do not remember that, but it sounds like a similar kind of architecture or something like that, or similar
different
heat issue?
architecture, but they had heat issues when they first introduced, like, this new design standpoint, and the same thing is kind of happening here. So basically, it gets really hot, and then that chipset, because it's in an enclosed environment like that, ends up throttling itself basically to prevent overheating.
Oh wow, so it almost backfires. Like, the chip got more powerful, but because it's outputting more heat, it's actually throttling itself to potentially last year's clock speed or lower.
Yes. So basically, where you're gonna see that happen is maybe during extended periods of, like, say, intense mobile gaming, like maybe your Stadia or maybe PUBG mobile or something like that. I doubt you're going to see it in any general normal application, but I just thought that was interesting, and I'm kind of glad I wasn't an early adopter.
I know, after all my excitement at the beginning, or sort of, the beginning of this segment, now I'm like, uh-oh, maybe it's not so good.
I'll link you an article to it later. I think it was on Android Authority that I read it, that I was reading about it. But
jeez, yeah, I would imagine that too. I mean, with, like, if you're shooting 8K video or doing anything in the camera app that could be more intensive, 4K video recording, I think that could be another issue where it could overheat, or you just get, like, bad battery life. So,
but Stetson,
yes,
I'm gonna take a quick step away from the desktop here. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about the Patreon a little bit while I'm gone, and tell them some exciting stuff we have planned?
Sounds good. Yeah. So first of all, thank you to everyone who is joining the live streaming of this on the podcast. I want to appreciate everyone for joining, and we go live typically on YouTube every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, if you're able to join us. But yeah, I want to give a shout out to the Patreon, patreon.com/Stetson Doggett. Up there, we're showing behind the scenes content for the latest videos. I did behind the scenes on my T-Mobile review, which was really cool and really fun to showcase what goes into creating that kind of video. The over 4,000 word script that I wrote, or maybe it was like 2,500 words, some insane number of words for that video. And we're trying to deliver some really cool perks as well, such as voting on what carrier and plan I test next. So if you're interested in having a say in that, please consider supporting us on the Patreon show. We'd love to have you there. I think we've got some exciting perks and benefits, as well as an ad-free version of this podcast, so you can enjoy the Best Phone Plans podcast without any ads or interruptions. But yeah, that's the Patreon community. We'd love to have you, and I think we'll continue on with the show now.
Sounds good. So continue on from phone topics. You have the Xiaomi Mi 11 in here. Stetson, tell me a little bit about that. Why is that there?
Yeah, so Xiaomi Mi 11 is basically an incredibly powerful Android phone packing insane specs at what is hopefully a competitive price point. The reason I say hopefully is because I believe it's available in China and maybe India right now. I'm not 100% sure on that, but the launch price is super affordable in those countries, and it's yet to be seen how that price will translate into like the UK, Europe, and most importantly, the United States. But this phone is packing, for example, a 108 megapixel camera, right? Huge, can shoot up to 8K 30 frames per second video. It's packing some of the latest specs. So yeah, and it's got a really interesting design with beautiful AMOLED display, 1500 nits of peak brightness. It's just on here because it's an incredible value in terms of what you're getting, price to specs. I'm not going to say price to performance because sometimes these phones just aren't as well optimized, but I think price to specs of what you're getting, really good value here.
Do you think it's going to actually make its way to the U.S.? I mean, I'm looking
I think so. I'm pretty sure the company has announced that they are working on a U.S. launch, kind of a more international launch. But yeah, it's just great specs, Snapdragon 888, which hopefully doesn't have the overheating issues, or it's not too bad at least. But yeah, that's kind of it's just an exciting piece of tech for bang for buck.
Because I'm looking at it real quick on GSM Arena, as well as their fact sheet to just see their band support. And I mean, it looks like it's pretty decent for the US, at least if you're going to be a T-Mobile user. It has supports for bands 2, 4, 5, 12, 41, but it's missing band 71 support.
Yeah, that is sometimes honestly the case with phones that are designed for China and India, like those markets. They don't use some of the same bands that we do. And so even though if it does come to the US, you typically just kind of lose out on that. And we actually saw that with TCL's phones at CES this year, where they announced phones that, touted 5G support, but they weren't really designed or optimized for the US market. It was more kind of like affordable budget options designed for other markets.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely be able to look at it. I mean, I'm always down for some more competition, and hopefully Biden doesn't throw any more bans in.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if you also saw, but Huawei got one more ban slapped their way before the old administration left. But I'll be on the lookout for it. When's it supposed to release, you said?
I'm actually not sure about that. I think it's available, again, either in China or India. I'm not sure if it's the official international launch has happened yet.
Okay. Gotcha. So Stetson,
yeah,
I think last week or the week before, I was giving you my pain points about my millions of messaging apps that I had.
Yes, I do recall that. And I think it's a valid point. I have too many messaging apps as well.
Well, you have apparently found the fix for me. Why don't you tell the audience about this service?
Yeah, so I found this really cool service. It's called Beeper, okay? And what Beeper is one messaging app that will unify all of your messaging services. So we're talking iMessage on Android. We're talking Telegram, Instagram, Signal, Discord, Slack, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Twitter, regular SMS messages, Skype, and more. This app is insane. It potentially could be the holy grail of all chat applications. But it's in beta. It's a $10 per month subscription. And in order to get iMessage, you need to have basically a Mac running an app 24/7.
But Stetson, for my nerdier friends out there in the audience, the software is open source, and you can actually avoid that $10 fee if you're able to set up your own server, which, Stetson, you've talked to me before. I'm fully capable. I mean, shucks. You see there's a work computer behind me. I think you can see there's another computer down there. So it's actually really exciting stuff, and I'm really glad it's open source because it means anyone can contribute. And I'm definitely going to be on the lookout for it. Although I had posed a good question to you when we were talking last night, and it was simply this. Is the inconvenience of having all the apps and just opening up on my phone really going to be worth going through setting up this additional app to do it all, right?
It's a valid question. I think it comes down to how the app works. Like, if it's true, you need to have all of these apps already downloaded on your phone in order to work. I think that's going to be more of a hassle than it's probably worth for most people. If it's the case where you download Beeper and, once you've gone through the initial setup process, like let's say you set it up on your computer, you sign into all your services on little like websites that pop like, hey, sign in here, here's another login window. You go through that hassle, which is definitely a hassle, but you go through it once and then it's set up and ready, like it's synced across all devices that you log into your Beeper account with, I think that's the dream. I think that could make it easily worth it for a lot of people. And we'll have Beeper linked in the show notes if you're interested in learning more about it. I think it's a really cool idea, and it clearly highlights a pain point that Dennis, you have, I have, and millions of other people have, is like there's too many apps for communicating. I don't know how it got so fragmented. But yeah, it's an exciting project that I'm looking forward to following closely in terms of its development and evolution.
Same. I'm just glad it's a thing. I'm glad someone's tackling it.
Yeah.
Stetson, why don't you introduce this other topic that you had lined up? Because I'm not too sure what you have here.
How about what if we just segue into some of the Patreon questions? Because I think they're some good discussions.
They're itching at the bit? Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
So we have a question here from Andy submitted on Patreon. Thank you, Andy, for your kind support. Andy's asking, I've ordered the Samsung Galaxy S21. My question is, what's the real issue with eSIM with US Samsung devices? Andy, great question. Here's the deal. I chatted with Samsung last night, actually, to try and get more information for you. It turns out they just disable eSIM on the US models. And they say, I chatted with the rep. She said, it's quote unquote coming mid-2021, okay, via a software update. And Andy, I'm sorry to report, that is exactly what they said last year with the S20. So I'm actually feeling extremely frustrated with Samsung right now. They're advertising this eSIM feature and not supporting it whatsoever. Yeah,
And it's not the first time they pulled the wool over our eyes. Like, I remember when the S8 released, one of the things they like marketed on their page was UFS 2.1 storage. Well, fun fact, if you got the regular S8, the small boy, it did not have UFS 2.1 on the Snapdragon model. It was 2.0 still. Yeah. Only the S8 Plus had the opportunity to get the 2.1 storage, but there was two variants of it. One that had like, I think it was like Toshiba's flash storage, and one that was Samsung. So you only had like a 1/4 of a chance of actually getting that 2.1 storage on the S8, which doesn't matter for most people, right? No one cares about read and write speeds on their internal storage, but I'm the type of person that looks at all those fun details, like when we were talking about band support, and I care about that kind of thing. So it's not the first time that Samsung pulled the wool over our heads, just like with the eSIM that's going on right now. That being said, the good news is that it really is just a software update. The bad news is that things are never as easy as just flipping a switch. I'm sure there's a bunch of regulations and all kinds of other fun stuff that needs to happen before they can just turn that on, especially since updates here in the US, we have to wait for our carriers typically to dish them out anyway, which adds even more time of waiting. So even if Samsung did push out an update today, we'd still have to wait for T-Mobile to go through their whole passing, or whoever you have, to roll out that update to you.
Something interesting is the rep said T-Mobile would actually be the first supported carrier that eSIM would work with. So I guess if you're an eSIM customer, then maybe T-Mobile is the network to be on. Honestly, I don't have any trust or faith in Samsung at this point, given their track record with last year's Galaxy S20. So Andy, I hope that answers your question. We have another question here from Hector. Hector, thank you so much for your support. Hector's wondering, is there a progression towards using AR with AI, such as something similar to a voice assistant, and will 5G enable that function? Hector, I wish I had asked this with our guests on. However, I think we can kind of extrapolate from that segment where, we had Mike talking about when you're able to offload data processing to a server and you have a 5G connection streaming the processed data to the phone, suddenly you can use AI to look at the camera feed from the phone and identify certain objects and use those triggers to display elements in AR. And so I think that's really going to be the key in terms of leveraging AI in an AR experience, like identifying, hey, this is a face, let's display something here, or identifying, hey, this is a mountain, let's display something here, or maybe even different kinds of plants or objects. I'm thinking like combine Google Lens and its object recognition with with AR overlays on top of that for entirely new experiences.
You know, Stetson, I don't know if you ever played Halo before, but the moment that technology becomes available, I'm literally going to have Cortana from like Master Chief be my virtual assistant. Like, actually, now that I think about it, Microsoft Windows voice assistant's Cortana, so I'll just get her personified. There we go.
Nice. So, Hector, thanks for the support, and I hope that answers your question. Another one, Dennis, I'll let you answer this one first. Which is better, Verizon prepaid or AT&T prepaid, if speed is the focus?
Easily, hands down, AT&T prepaid if speed is the focus. AT&T right now has way more spectrum deployed and available to them at this current moment in time, and it seems like just due to that main reason, deprioritization is not much of a factor. I've seen people on AT&T prepaid getting like 250 megabits per second, while my post plan gets like 300, right? So it's like not that huge of a gap. And there's even people that have Cricket, specifically their unlimited plan that includes 5G, they're getting great speeds, and they're also pretty low in the priority totem pole. But AT&T, hands down, 1,000,000% the better option if you're focused on speed specifically.
Dennis, I don't think I could have said that better myself. Verizon is just so congested. They don't have the spectrum and bandwidth available that prepaid customers are pretty heavily deprioritized. And you actually see this a lot with Visible. Like, those reports of Visible being slow would also be the same with Verizon prepaid. So if you're looking for speed on a budget, AT&T prepaid is where it's at.
But that being said, if we can expand out from those two prepaid segments, if you remember from previous episodes, I talked about how if I was going to be a prepaid customer, I would go with US Mobile for the Verizon network coverage if I was going to do that.
Yep.
And US Mobile is actually a decent option because you can buy higher priority to get those faster speeds. So if we're expanding out from that, US Mobile might not be a bad option to look at for yourself as well, because at the end of the day, it's not all just about speed and coverage. Like, that's super important, but pricing and what feature sets you're getting as well is semi-important, I would say.
And Dennis, I think we should almost bring in one of your favorite carriers, Xfinity Mobile, right? Where they actually give you priority access on the Verizon network, especially for their lower tier plans, right? So if you get a data bucket, I think they offer like 1 gig, is it 5 gigs and 10 gigs?
It's
1, 3, and 10.
It's 1, 3, and 10, and those are their shared data plan, or those are their shared data plan options, like the old school buckets that you kind of remember from yesteryear. If you're one person, not really that great of an option unless you're going to be like on the 1 or 3 gig plan. But they also offer unlimited, and it's $45. And at least here in Pennsylvania with tax and everything, it would work out like $47 with tax and whatnot, because our taxes aren't that crazy. Yeah, if you have Comcast or Spectrum cable or
same thing, yeah,
or something like that where you can get Verizon through them, they're not a bad option to look at either. I just typically avoid recommending them on the show because I know a lot of people don't have them, and
yeah, it is definitely tricky to get around that. And I will say, if you want the by the gig plans by default come with priority access, but the unlimited plan you actually have to pay extra. I think it's around $20 a month extra for that premium add-on.
Do you have to?
Yeah, if you want the priority on the unlimited plan, you have to pay for the add-on. But if you don't want the priority, then you don't have to pay for the add-on.
Huh? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was just looking into it myself as I was updating some of the plans on bestphoneplans.net, and that was kind of an interesting little tidbit I discovered on the site, is that they have that add-on. So yeah, here it is. If you want the HD, so it's an HD pass that's available for the unlimited plan, and it is, I'm not actually seeing it on the site.
I feel like you could just use the VPN link you did before to get the HD quality. If it's just I know that they limit it to 40p. Like the what's Verizon's postpaid like starter plan called? I don't remember.
Start Unlimited.
Start Unlimited. I know Xfinity Mobile's unlimited plans like Verizon's Start Unlimited, where they cap your video streams to 40p. But outside of that, I thought it was the same level of priority overall. Outside of that,
and
so
I believe
the fine print's like 20 gigs of priority data you get or something like that.
Yeah, so it's 20 gigs, and it says the HD pass is available for higher quality cellular service. So this is actually bumping you up. But I'm not actually seeing the pricing on that. But either way, yeah, I mean, I hope that answers that basically goes back to the Verizon versus AT&T. Like if you're on the Verizon network, you typically want priority access, and if you're on AT&T, prepaid is going to be kind of a better move.
That, and plus there's not really that many MVNO options for AT&T anyway. You kind of got AT&T prepaid, Cricket, and I think Red Pocket, right? That's about it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a few MVNOs out there, but the options are typically better from AT&T themselves. And yeah, we actually have a chat on the YouTube live stream version of the show from Austin. He's saying AT&T prepaid unlimited plus is now $60. And yeah, what's good about AT&T prepaid unlimited plus is that it includes postpaid priority data. You get 22 gigs of that priority data before you're deprioritized. And it's $75 a month and then $60 a month with auto pay. And it actually used to be even cheaper. It used to be, I think, $55 with auto pay. So still, it's a great deal for single line users.
But Stetson,
Dennis,
we've made it to about the hour and 10 mark. Do you want to maybe wrap it up for the actual podcast itself, and then we'll go do an after show for a little bit with the audience to engage with them?
That sounds great. Yeah, so thank you everyone for listening to the Best Phone Plans podcast. We love hosting it. We hope you enjoyed. Special guests, Mike and Elena from QReal, talking about augmented reality and kind of the experiences they're building and designing. If you're interested in supporting the show, we'd really appreciate it if you checked out the Patreon. Again, we have exciting perks such as behind-the-scenes content, an ad-free version of the show, and the option to vote on which cell phone plans and carriers I test next. So please consider that out. The link is in the show notes, and we really appreciate it. Either way, I'm Stetson.
And I'm Dennis.
And we look forward to talking to you in the next episode.
Peace.